Hello everybody, Scott Barber is my name and I will be your host for today. It gives me great pleasure to welcome everybody on behalf of Deutsche Telekom, and today we will be discussing customer experience. Today with me in the studio is David Fox, VP of Deutsche Telekom's In-Flight and Connectivity. David, welcome.
Thank you, Scott. The pleasure is all mine. First of all, I wanted to say it's exciting to be back at the Aircraft Interiors Expo, even if it's just a virtual event. Customer experience, or in our industry that equates to passenger experience, has always been a hot topic in commercial aviation and of course for AIX. In these challenging times, delivering good passenger experience has become even more important, as those passengers that do fly have come to expect more value from their airline, and the airlines are striving to meet those expectations. We will be discussing how delivering good customer experience delivers value for both airlines and passengers, and we'll do that with representatives and customer experience experts from two major airlines and from a solution provider. But first, we also wanted to give the outside view. Ian Golding, today's keynote speaker, is not from the aviation industry, but he has delivered successful customer experience improvements across a wide range of industries: technology, retail, banking, to name just a few. He has written the book on customer experience, and Customer Experience magazine has recently named him the #1 influencer in customer experience in the UK. He's also worked with Deutsche Telekom, helping our organization become more customer-centric. So I'm very happy to have him here today and share his insights, his views, but also challenge us on the topic of good customer experience.
Hi, my name is Ian Golding. I'm a global customer experience specialist working with organizations all around the world to help them understand how to become more sustainably customer-centric. And it's such a pleasure and honor to be able to participate in the Aircraft Interiors Expo to talk about how we can offer passengers more value through digitization and outstanding customer experiences. To kick us off, it's important that I contextualize the evolution of customer experience as a discipline. Because whilst many organizations talk a lot about it, the background to customer experience has continually been evolving, tracing its roots all the way back to approximately 30 years ago with the advent of direct marketing, continuing to evolve into CRM until eventually in 2011 being recognized as a discipline in its own right. You may not be aware, but in 2011, the Customer Experience Professionals Association was founded. And for the first time, customer experience was recognized as a profession itself. But today, in 2021, customer experience has evolved even further, because not only is there now a recognition of the importance of customer experience in differentiating organizations around the world, there is now an understanding that we can't deliver the customer experience without people. And so the significance of the employee experience has continued to grow. In fact, the pandemic has only risen employee experience further to the forefront of people's minds. And the most customer-centric organizations in the world understand that the way they treat their people is the way their people will treat the customer. And in this increasingly digitized world that we live in, we must not forget that experiences are delivered by people and for people, which is why it doesn't matter how digitally enabled an industry becomes. Customer experience is all about human interaction. And so we should really be thinking not about employee or customer experience, but the human experience. And so it's very important that if we're going to be able to offer greater value to passengers, we need to understand what makes an experience in the first place. And there are three core elements to all experiences that are delivered around the world: the functional, the emotional, and the accessible. The functional element represents your products and your services. Most legacy organizations, the aviation industry is no different. When organizations were created, they were created to differentiate on the functional element alone. The problem that the aviation industry faces right now, in fact all industries face, is that unless your products or services are completely unique, it is becoming increasingly difficult, if not impossible, to differentiate on that functional element alone. Because unless your product or service is completely unique, you can't. And that is why it is vital going forward that all industries, especially the airline industry, thinks more and more about the two other elements, specifically the accessible element. How easy is it for your customer to interact with your products and services? And this is where the advent of digital technology comes in, because the easier we're able to make the experience, the more likely it is that the customer will come to you rather than one of your competitors. In the global economy that we live in today, the organization that has mastered this better than anyone else is Amazon, because in the markets where Amazon operate, they've made the experience so accessible, consumers do not bother looking anywhere else anymore. But what's fascinating about Amazon is they sell exactly the same things as everyone else. It's not their products or services that differentiate them, it's how easy they've made it to access those products and services. And it is Amazon that the airline industry needs to emulate. How can you utilize the continuing evolution of digital technology to make the experience you offer your passenger even easier than ever before, and easier and more accessible than your competition? And the functional and accessible elements then enable the most important element of the three, the emotional element, which represents the way the experience makes your customer feel. And the reason that's the most important element of the three is because it doesn't matter, again, how digitally enabled we come, the way we make the customer feel is what they're most likely to remember. And customers will remember one of three things from all experiences they have. They'll remember very good things, they'll remember very bad things, or they will remember nothing at all. And as we continue to grapple with this global pandemic crisis, what we need to ask ourselves is, what are your customers remembering about their experience with you? Are they remembering, oh, this was just so difficult, so complicated? Or are they remembering the experience for the right reason? Ultimately, what you need to ask yourselves is, can your organization today differentiate not on the product or service, but the whole experience? Because if you want to differentiate on the whole experience, you will need to determine if your business can get to the right-hand side of what we call the customer experience continuum. This is where you are able to differentiate on the whole experience. This is where the Amazons of the world come in. And to get to the right-hand side, you need to have these characteristics in place. You need to be exceptionally easy to interact with. If you have the sense today that you are not as easy to interact with as you could be, you have not yet made it to the right-hand side. Your people, those that face the customer and those that don't, need to have the time and the ability to think and act in the interests of the customer every time they do anything. Are we adopting digital technology to save money and eliminate human interaction, or are we adopting digital technology to improve the experience? We need to be thinking and acting in the interests of the customer if we want to differentiate on that experience. And if we're thinking and acting in the interests of the customer, when things go wrong, because they will always go wrong, we will fix the things that go wrong so they don't go wrong again. And everyone will obsess with the delivery of our brand promise, because everyone knows what it is and everyone is going in the same direction. If we're going to be able to get to the right-hand side of this continuum, to become sustainably customer-centric, We need to also ask ourselves if we have the right structure and rigor to make it happen. We need to be able to align the organizational layers that will enable us to get to the right-hand side. All experiences are constructed of these three core layers, the first being the customer journey. I know that the aviation industry has become very effective in understanding the passenger journey, but are you effective enough? The passenger journey or customer journey has always existed, but does everyone in your organization know what it is? And not just the journey on the aircraft itself, but the end-to-end journey that your passengers are having with you. The second layer are your business processes, representing the things that your people, your employees do every day. What you need to ask yourselves is, are your people doing things in alignment with the customer journey? Or are they doing things that are not aligned to the journey? If your people are doing things every day that have no impact on the customer at all, why are they doing it in the first place? Do you have processes crossing over each other, duplicating? Are there gaps in the customer journey where nothing happens to the customer? But the third layer is equally as critical, because the third layer is the technology layer. And what we need to ask ourselves is, are we putting technology in place in alignment with our processes and the customer journey? Unfortunately, and the aviation industry is as guilty of this as any other, too many organizations are throwing digital technology at the customer experience without knowing what the journey looks like. What they're doing is creating and implementing technology. They're then forcing business processes into it, and customers get whatever they get. If we want to offer passengers, customers, more value through technology and through outstanding experiences, what we cannot do is start with the technology and work upwards. What we need to do is to start with the technology and work downwards. What technology can we put in place that will better enable our processes to deliver the customer journey? And coming back to the importance of having a structured approach to this, if you're going to be able to effectively manage these layers, to continuously meet the needs and expectations of customers, to stand a chance of delivering experiences that truly wow them, you need a structured approach to doing it. And I am a huge advocate of putting in place a framework to make the management of the experience intentional. This is a framework that I created almost 10 years ago, but there are many frameworks that exist in the world today. Many of them are known as maturity models. My framework, just as an illustration, contains 3 parts to it: strategy, measurement, and people. The strategy part of the framework is 3 questions, 3 very simple questions. Do you know who your customers are? Do you know what you want their experience to be? And does everyone know the role they play in delivering that experience? The second part of the framework I call measurement, or the facts, because customer experience should be a fact-based methodology. And this is where the customer journey comes in. And this part of the framework should be about the adoption of a cycle of interconnected activities to manage the customer journey. The activities including knowing who the customer is in the first place, so we can visualize their journey, we can measure their journey to identify the small number of priorities to have the greatest impact on improving their perception and, as a result, financial performance. And when we know what those priorities are, we then need to fix them. And we then do that all over again and all over again forever. And the third part of the framework is all about people. Because as I've already touched on, we cannot deliver the experience without our people. It does not matter how digitally enabled you become. And so this third part of the framework is all about the creation of, the sustaining of a customer-centric culture or environment that enables our people to think and act in the interests of the customer every time they do anything. As I've already said, all of this is underpinned by human interaction. When I mean this, I mean business. I mean the customer experience. Customer experience is about human interaction. And underpinning all of that is the necessity for an organization to empathize with its customers. There is a direct relationship between empathy and financial performance. And this is why. If the aviation industry is going to be able to deliver greater value through digitization and through outstanding experiences, it needs to underpin everything it does with a clear understanding of the way it is making its customers feel. Because empathy builds advocacy. It turns customers into fans. Fans become loyal. Loyal fans come back to you more often, spend more money, and tell others about you. And if they come back to you more often, spend more money, and tell others about you, you will grow sustainably. It's not rocket science. So I want to conclude by sharing 5 tips, 5 focus areas of what organizations need to consider in 2021 and beyond to enable that human-to-human interaction to lead to sustainable growth in this increasingly digitized world. The first focus area is to ensure that everyone in your organization understands the direction that you're going in. What does it mean to have a digital strategy? What does it mean to be customer focused? What is our vision? What is the direction we're going in? Everyone needs to be crystal clear in understanding that. Again, as I've intimated, we cannot deliver outstanding customer experiences until we are delivering equally outstanding employee experiences. The way you treat your people is the way your people will treat your customers. And so if you're not focusing on the employee experience yet, that is something that must become a priority. We need to become much, much better at giving our people time to think. We have become globally, across all industries, incredibly task-focused, process-focused. And we're so task-focused, people are not being given time to think. If you're not given time to think, you can't empathize because you're not thinking about who you're performing the task for. We need to give our people time to think so they can effectively empathize with the customer. But at the same time, we also need to become significantly better at listening to our customers and listening to our people and acting on what they're telling us. And not just acting on what they're telling us, but then telling them what we've done with the things that they've told us, closing the loop. And the final thing is absolutely vital, again, in this increasingly digitized world that we live in. We have become a world that is very focused on channel and on product. Customers do not interact with channels. They do not interact with products. They interact with your organization. The customer journey is called a customer journey for a reason, because it's a customer journey. And as a result, if your organization enables customers to interact with you across products and across channels, it is vital that you are considering the journey as an omni-channel, omni-product journey. If you think about channels in isolation of each other, you will misinterpret the way your customers are interacting with you. The last 18 months have undoubtedly been the most challenging 18 months in living memory. And there are many, many times where the future has looked incredibly bleak. But despite the murkiness of what we've experienced, there are lots of positives that we must draw upon. And the biggest positive of all is that the importance of human interaction, the importance of empathy has really risen to the forefronts of people's minds. And if that has enabled us to live in a world that becomes kinder, becomes truly more human-centric, that cannot be a bad thing. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to my thoughts on this subject. If you do have any questions or you'd like to progress the conversation, please do not hesitate to reach out to me. But for now, thank you and enjoy the rest of the event.
So, thank you very much, Ian, for some great insights, and this will definitely help us lead right into our panel discussion. With us today is Thomas Luxor from Lufthansa Group. Thomas, would you please give us a few words about yourself?
Yeah, thanks for having me. Interesting video. I'm glad to be on the panel. Yes, I'm Thomas. I'm working for Lufthansa Group. Together with my team, I'm responsible for the entertainment and connectivity content and portal stream, as well as the e-journal product. And we are looking forward to our discussion today.
Thank you. Also with us today is Mark Cheney from Virgin Atlantic. Mark, could you please say a few words?
Thank you, and great video from Ian as well. I'm Mark Cheney. I'm the in-flight connectivity development manager at Virgin Atlantic, and I'm responsible for all things connectivity, simply put. So, the portal experience, completing requirements, talking to supplier relationship management, and many other things as well. But Mr. Connectivity here.
Great, thank you. And also with us is Jan-Peter Gense from Lufthansa Systems. Jan.
Yes, thank you. Hello, Jan Gense. I'm heading the department Passenger Experience Solutions at Lufthansa Systems. Some of you might know it better as Sport Connect, which is the core product in that domain. And we focus on digital solutions that we want to bring to the aviation industry, specifically the aircraft, to help further the digitization of the cabin. So, guys, thank you for having me. I'm really looking forward to an exciting discussion. And Ian, amazing video. Thank you for the insights.
So, to kick off the discussion, let's ask the airline representatives. You guys are responsible for passenger experience within your companies. Can you please tell us what you think passenger experience means? Thomas, would you start?
Yeah, I think there were one of the other aspects in the video of Ian shown as well. It's about accessibility, and I think it has to be omnichannel. With the connectivity technology on board the aircraft, we can now bring actually all the functions which we are used on the ground also into the air, with some limitations, of course, but in principle, this breakage in the customer journey, which we may have had in the past between ground and air, should no longer exist.
Okay, thank you. And Mark, how do you see it?
Yeah, for me, it kind of boils down to something simpler than that, really. I think it's ensuring that, when the customer leaves the aircraft and, they've used the in-flight connectivity service in its totality, and by that I mean, the portal, and they've consumed some of the services and features, and, they've obviously then gone onto the internet, but they leave that, with that positive sentiment, and that positive experience of using that system. Now, obviously, there's a lot of challenges, that we have to deal with, not least commercial comparisons to the ground, etc. But, it's our challenge to ensure that, and as Thomas has said, that we take in some of those kind of omni-channel pieces and, other services and features and weave them into that customer experience in a relevant and contextual manner that makes sense and drives kind of ultimate value to the customer.
Okay, thank you very much. So we've learned today that within the customer experience, there's three main focus points: functional, accessible, and emotional. Jan, what are your views on that?
That's quite a broad topic, and picking up on what Thomas and Mark just said, because they already did a lot in what they just mentioned around omni-channel, a positive experience. There was one word, I think you both actually mentioned it, which is value. In order to bring all those three together, you need to define what actually brings value to my passengers, to my guests, to my customers. And that really is the exciting piece to flesh that out. Is it accessibility? Definitely. It certainly is a piece of what services do I offer? And then design your digital experience around that value that you want to bring to your guests. That sounds really easy, but if you ask many airline representatives, definitely not the two here because they know that, I'm sure, what is it that drives value for your customers? They'll have to think about it. And that's a process that you have to go through. And looking at that in a bit broader picture, there have been some passenger customer experience fails in the past that I really care or feel deeply about, that I'd kind of like to mention also to start the discussion a little bit maybe. One of the things that I see coming up again is airlines asking for, can we please get a payment on board in an offline or online environment to access content, access movies? Now, what's the value in that? What's the value in somebody bringing his own device on board of an aircraft and then make him pay to watch a movie that's stored on board of the aircraft? That generates absolutely no value, quite the opposite. In my view, that creates a horrible passenger experience and actually will leave people leave the aircraft not in a positive mood, as you called it, Mark, but in a very negative mood because they had to pay for something that they get free everywhere else. Nevertheless, there still is a big drive by airlines in this time where they're hungry for money, hungry for cash, to capitalize on the system they have on board. And then several go to those crude solutions, make them pay for content, make them pay for basic stuff. That is really the wrong thing. If you think it through and define what brings value to my guests, to my passengers, and can I add commercial aspects to that by smartly applying advertisement, upsell capabilities, buy on board products, you probably will be way more effective and create a more positive mood than by crudely just charging them for everything that you can charge them for. So that kind of spins the whole thing. Create something, define value, and then build on that one that defines the value for your guests, for your passengers that fit to your brand.
Very interesting. I find it very interesting, this multi-channel, omni-channel discussion that we've had. Is there already things in the customer journey and the omni-channel part that has been currently implemented?
Yeah, Scott. So maybe I can shed some light on our thoughts on one particular component of that, or on how we try to go towards this omni-channel approach. We've been working with our airline customers and airline partners a lot on harmonizing their in-flight connectivity experience. And by harmonizing, I mean this goes beyond just a harmonized front end, a harmonized portal. This is really about integrating the different processes, the airline's back-end system, into the customer journey. Now, if you achieve that, you realize three concrete benefits for the airline. So on the one hand, a harmonized footprint can be immediately marketed as a larger footprint than 3 individual or 4 individual ones, or fragmented ones, to roaming partners and to other companies that are interested in using your footprint for sponsorship. The ease of implementation is another aspect. I think Jan will agree with me here when we say if you've got multiple integration against multiple different cabin systems, this can actually lead to a lot of cost and additional time for implementation, which then makes any, let's say, customer experience effort sometimes too long-winded or even not worth the effort of doing this. And finally, and maybe that's just let's say a happy byproduct, are optimized operations aspects, such as crew training, for example. If you're in one harmonized environment, we've got only one system to train on, and that's very important, as we know, in the context of connectivity. The flight attendants are very often the first line of support for the customer. So overall, by better integration into the airline systems, we help moving towards a true omni-channel approach, integrating connectivity more into the overall customer journey, making it more seamless, and then ultimately helping it create more value.
Good point. Good point. Ian also mentioned in his part that delivering good customer experience results in delivering more value to the customers and passengers. Thomas, would you agree to this? And more importantly, would your customers and passengers agree to this?
Yeah, I would agree to this. I think Jan mentioned about the value. I think you have to bring value to your customers, otherwise they're not going to use the service anyhow. So I think it is important, and the more seamless the so-called digital journeys, the more likely is that passengers are going to use that. I mean, bringing value is actually a multifarious topic. It could be entertainment, but it could be also information. It could be information about your baggage status. It could be information about your follow-on flight being delayed, giving you the opportunity to rebook while you're already on another flight. So I think connectivity brings a lot of possibilities, and the challenge is from a customer perspective, to think what the customer really need. I think also from a development phase, we are not doing everything right, and we do not know everything at first hand. So I think we need also to try out, have a good analytics data available, and also put services which were not valued by our customers already as well done, and develop new ones. So I think it's a continuous development which actually never stops. So I think that this is important to know, that a service which was maybe good 1-2 years ago may not be further developed, but instead you put a new service, and new demands are also developing on the passenger side. So
yeah, there's actually some things, Thomas, here you're spot on. 3 things come to mind. One that actually you mentioned, which is consistency across the fleet. Airlines have usually a heterogeneous fleet with many different IFEC hardware equipment on board. And by leveraging smart technology, you can still create a nice consistency across the fleet. So the passenger, no matter what aircraft he flies on, will actually have the same experience. And building on that, if you're smart in the technology you implement, you can change quickly. And Thomas mentioned you need to have the data. Yes, you need to have the data, but then you also need to have the ability to react, trial stuff out, and don't wait 6-8 months before you can change a piece of software on board. So here the digital ecosystem on board needs to become more flexible, has become more flexible and more open. And in terms of value, what I just thought of, Thomas, when you mentioned all the things, I think, was it the horrible aviation summer 2018 or 19 when we had all the cancellations? Keep forgetting which year it was. Just imagine if we had the technology where you could give a passenger already in flight the voucher to his hotel, his meal voucher, and his ticket to the next flight, rather than having him land and queue at a horrendously overcrowded counter. That would certainly give him a better experience and ease the pain of flight cancellations in a very positive way.
And Mark, do you have any views on this topic as well?
I think Thomas kind of summed it up quite well, and I think so there's also been a few points raised by Jan on the kind of the ecosystem, that we have. Improving that customer experience is very much about kind of iteration, and as what we've covered before, taking data from a whole host of sources, some airline, some analytical from the provider, things that are going on the ground, and kind of in some ways mashing them together to kind of give you a more holistic view of what's going on. But going back to the digital platform side of things, the platforms are getting better. There used to be a time, 10 years ago, where and even closer to us now, where if you wanted to change something, it was there was a 6-month lead time minimum, a hefty cost, and then a slow process of it to be rolled out to the fleet. Some of the things that, I did at IAG with the .air stuff, kind of changed a lot of that for me and my experiences of what we can do. When we've got the right platforms in there, we can change things faster, develop things quicker, react to, events, campaigns and things so much faster than we ever could. And that's really critical to kind of deliver upon this good customer experience.
Mark, do you mind if I take a question on here? Mark, do you mind if I take a question on here real quick? You mentioned the .air experience that you built for IAG, and I think Thomas can probably say similar things. Would you say that it's important for airlines to get more into control of what happens in the cabin and of the digital platform, rather than outsourcing it to the big IFEC vendors?
So I would say yes, having kind of lived and breathed it. But I do appreciate that isn't for everyone, and not every airline has the capacity to do that. So you do have to, have a long, hard think about, what you're getting into, the challenges that you want to embrace, and what you want to deliver upon. And, is that the right fit for me and our team now? Is that something we can move to later? And ultimately, there is nothing wrong with, working closely with, IFC vendors, whoever they may be. You can still get, what you want to achieve out of it. But I think for me, in my opinion, I would like to see airlines take a little bit more control, of their connectivity experiences in total. Yeah.
But that's a really good point, Mark. Because let me just latch onto that, if I may, because this is an interesting point in here about the airline being able to take control of that experience. And what we learned today, also in Ian's statement, is that some experiences may actually be good, but they're completely accidental. And in order for these to be no longer accidental, but actually a harmonized, a good, a reproducible experience, I think you need to be, as an airline, in control of that. And I agree with you, Mark, when you say, well, not every airline can actually do this. But then also the responsibility then falls a little bit to the vendors to have modular solutions in place that hopefully integrates with the many other solutions that are out there in the market. And what we see in our solutions business for aviation, there's a trend that I can also see when we look at telco, and that is a more modular approach. We're breaking down a lot of the silos, so insular solutions don't really have, let's say, any real longevity anymore. If you want to succeed in the market, if you still want to play, then what you deliver, what your contribution in that solution on the customer journey is, will have to be open, will have to also fit and integrate not just with one airline, but also with, let's say, the Lufthansa systems, DIB system. Tomorrow I'm with another vendor, but we need to be able, as product managers, for example, to still be able to control that customer experience.
And don't forget, it needs to be more than just the in-flight part.
Oh,
yes,
yeah.
we're focusing here on the in-flight right now, but if you want to create a consistent experience across all the customer touchpoints, the entire journey, you need to have a solution that can tie in with all the ground systems as well, so that you get to this from beginning to end consistent journey. Yeah. That sounds really easy, but honestly, I think we're probably a couple of years away from that, realistically. Yeah. Hoping it's only a couple.
Okay, thanks guys. Here at Deutsche Telekom, we've seen a massive boom in the amount of traffic and data utilization of our customers. Do you see this trend moving into the airlines and into the airplanes?
I mean, from an ISP perspective, Scott, I can see that that this trend is indeed following into the cabin. The usage that we're seeing right now is that those passengers that do fly, there's less of them, but they do use more data. If we are looking at statistics in particular from our European aviation network, which is a broadband solution for Europe specifically, the usage statistics show that our passengers on board behave very much like on the ground. So the most popular service that is being used is Netflix, is the different streaming services that are there. And the profile that we can observe is not all that different from a user on the ground. But let's pass this to our airline colleagues here on the panel. What has your experience been, and how do you think we can keep up good customer experience for connectivity in the future? Maybe Thomas, do you want to start?
Yeah, I can. My question would be, why should our passenger behave on board differently than on the ground? I mean, connectivity is connectivity, and if I have easy access to internet, why shouldn't I use it while flying? So I think it is somehow logic that the passenger behavior is similar than on the ground. I think it's up to us to make them to bring to them the appropriate technology and also the value. We know that providing internet connectivity on board an aircraft is not for free, so someone has to pay for it. It's either the airline, but there are good sponsorship opportunities as well. So I think in sum, it is important to understand that what you mentioned, David, that the passengers are behaving similar as on the ground, and actually it's up to us, the airline, to make use of that.
Mark, anything to add?
I mean, I think I agree with everything that Thomas has said. I think from Virgin Atlantic's perspective, you know, we see kind of the take up and the data usage of our customers has grown, you know, over the course of the pandemic, and you know, despite those kind of lower kind of volumes of customers, and I think that goes to show kind of the human nature of the wanting to be connected to people, to let people know, especially over the last 18 months, you know, that they want to be connected, let people know they're safe and they're on the way home or they're on the way to see them, you know, etc. Looking forward, you know, maintaining this kind of customer experience, and you know, it's looking positive. If you look at the technologies that deliver in-flight connectivity, they're only getting better. They're only getting cheaper. You know, that helps with, you know, things like sponsorship, compared to say 5-10 years ago when, you know, it would have been very difficult. And again, going back to that point around value, you know, listening to your customers, listening to what they're saying, and championing, you know, their needs, you know, in our own airlines, you know, to deliver a better customer experience. So, you know, looking at all of that in, you know, holistically, you know, I think we can deliver something better in the future, and we can continue to deliver, you know, great experiences.
Thank you. So we're slowly running out of time, but before we go, I have one last question I'd like to ask. If you had the choice and the wish to be able to change one customer experience point, whether it be from the airline side or from the solution provider side, what would it be? Jan, would you?
Well, that's kind of a loaded question, isn't it? Because there's so many points right on top of my list that we already touched on consistency, ease of access. If I had to really pick one, I think the seamless access. I go on board, I am connected to the internet, to the onboard system, and I consume services. That would be the one thing I'd really like to change: consistency and the ease of access, especially on board.
Thank you.
Very good. Well, on the seamless side, I think we can help with the connectivity part on that.
Yeah, I teed that up for you. So
Thank you very much. By the way, totally spontaneous. No, but seriously, I would expand that, because this is now time to wish for things. We not only work for a solution provider, we are also, most of us, frequent flyers. And if I had one wish to the airline, it would also be to make the whole experience more seamless. Know who I am, give me connectivity. That's a certain aspect. But I would wish for complete seamlessness of the whole customer journey, and that would have a good value for me. And quite honestly, I'd be prepared to pay for that.
Okay. And to Mark.
Well, Jan's already stolen my seamless one that I was going to lead into, and so I don't want to repeat the same thing. So I think if there was one thing that it's not really a customer experience point, but it's having kind of truly open and standardized systems that that would allow for easier harmonization from an airline perspective. I think too often we find that there are too many differences, despite things being open or classed as open, that make the challenge that little bit greater, in terms of harmonizing the experience. But if things were, I say, truly open, and if there was a set of standards, then I think that would help greatly our goal for kind of harmonization and creating this consistent user experience in flight. But seamless and harmonization across all services are very awesome as well.
Okay. And Thomas, do you have anything else to add?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, actually, with maybe one exemption, because a wish, at least in our organization, is coming true today, because we are currently rolling out our digital in-service platform, which is an own software developed, which is the backbone of our connectivity strategy throughout the Lufthansa Group fleet. So I think this will establish exactly the topics which we have discussed about accessibility, seamless service, and I'm happy that this is currently ongoing program in our organization.
Great.
Me too.
Well, thank you for everyone for taking part today. It's been a very interesting discussion on customer experience. I'd like to finish with one last point, and I think it was that Ian really showed it's not such a customer experience, but it's really the human experience for everyone from the beginning to end. And I think that was a very valuable point there. So thank you again for everyone, and
thank you.
Bye for now.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye-bye. Take care.